Hey guys, how's everything going? This is JSer. This is the third video of relay series. In the previous two videos, we've covered the basic setup, basic query, load query stuff for the relay. And in this video, let's try to make it more interesting because we're creating a to-do app, and it's nothing if we don't have some to-dos, right? Okay, so let's try to add some to-dos. The first thing we need to do is to add some endpoint, where add some data in the to-dos. At the first stage, we don't need to consider about the mutation. Means in the post, we only need to handle the a query. So here, obviously in a GraphQL type, GraphQL user type, we expose something else other than the ID and the status, which is the to-dos. Type, I think it should be a list, something list, GraphQL list, GraphQL. No, it should be graph. Oh yeah, it's GraphQL. GraphQL. We created some new type called GraphQL to-dos and a resolve. Just to-dos. We mark the data by some fixed to-dos. We add it here. For this to-do, we have some ID. Let's say to-do 1 and title, which is hello. And because the to-do there is completed or not, so we add a flag. It's completed. So it's the first one is true, and I just add two to-dos. We just type 2 hello world, and it's not completed. It's complete. Is complete. Great. And then, yeah, we update the schema. Some error. GraphQL to-do. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to create the to-do also. GraphQL, obviously it's the same as, it's similar to the GraphQL user, so we copy the code. To-do. We expose 3, which is title. So this is title, and also this is the is complete. This is none now. It's a GraphQL. I think it's Boolean. So Boolean, yeah, there is it. So this is complete. Let's update the schema. Something wrong here. Must contain unique schema must contain uniquely named types, but contain multiple types named concact. What's that? Okay, GraphQL to-dos type new GraphQL list GraphQL to-do. Oh, here it should be a to-do. Great, it's done. And let's restart the server. Let's see the schema GraphQL. This is user. This is the same as before, but now we have a to-do. It's an array of to-do. To the type, ID, title is complete. It's just what we want, right? Let's query the data from our graphical. Reloaded. Okay, this is the to-dos actually. ID, title, and is complete. 2 seconds, and is not defined, so there's some error. Let's fix it. Okay, here, this is the problem. Great, you can see that we have this is the data before, and now we have some to-dos, right? Now in our UI part, I've applied some CSS from the to-do MVC. So the previously we have some raw H1 for the JSer one. Now we have some nicely styled elements in our UI, which is the app.js. Let's try to show the to-dos. Okay, I've already tried tried the code before, so I'll just make it quicker. This is the same as before. Okay. One thing is different is that, okay, I'll remove this one. Oh shit, I'm honest by something. So we have app, and before this is just something like this actually. Let's reload it. Error. Header actually will suspend. Okay, add the suspend here. Suspense fallback. Loading and loading. JSer, cool. And then we add the we create the to-do component. Okay, I've already have some draft here, so I'll copy the code, which has a nicely CSS. Okay, so function to-dos. For now, I'll just reuse the app query ref. And I'll just return the UL. Okay, and then as we did here, we would extract the data from the app query ref, right? Yeah, this is the data we want. So here should be data user.todos. We map the to-do, and then we put everything in the to-do component. I've already had a to-do component here, so let's create one. Function to-do app query ref. Just return something like this. Oh no, it's not app query ref anymore. It should be the to-do. So we got a to-do. Yeah, that's pretty much of it. But we haven't updated the query yet. So status here, status, and for each to-dos, we want the to-dos, and for each to-do, we want the ID, and also title, and is complete or not. I think there's something. Yeah, is complete or not. Great, the query is updated. We need to update the relay. Let's see. Loading JSer, but nothing is there. There's something wrong. Okay, to do user. Let's log the data here. It's not used. To do is not used. Shit. The query should be the same. Great. You see now we have this nicely the to-dos rendered, right? Also, we have this interaction, but because checked props to form without unchained. Because we don't have any interaction yet, we just render them. So to-dos, to-do, for each to-do checked, to-do is complete, and toggle. Yeah, sure. The problem now, we will cover the mutation in the following episode. So yeah, that's it. We've added the to-dos and rendered them on the UI, but here's the problem we must pay attention to, is that for each component, actually they have a mismatched data dependencies. For app, it has this app query ref. It's nice because we have this app query specifically for the app, but for the header, we're passing the whole ref to the header, right? You see, even though the header only have this needs the ID stuff. And also for the to-dos, we pass the whole dependency to it. And for these to-dos, we get all the data, and we just need the to-dos. So here's a problem. If we were using this component in some other places, right, we don't know where the data is coming from. So it's really not good. We need this component to be reusable by defining the data it needs within this component. I mean, for to-dos, there must be some to-do query. It's not app query, right? For this to-do, it might be to-do query, to-dos query. So it's not a good idea to just to pass on the whole ref, just bucket relay and get the data, extract the data from a source that we don't want anymore. We don't want too much. So that's the problem solved by relay fragment. So for each component, it defines not the whole query data, but just a piece. Suppose that we already have the whole data in the app query, right? So for each component, it will define only the piece, the fragment of the data that it needs. By defining this, we would construct a data dependency. So the component depends on the piece of data. That data is included in another piece of a fragment or a query in a data chunk, right? So we construct these kind of dependencies by fragment. Let's do it. So the first step is we need to split the component, right? Okay, the first thing, we create a to-dos. We copy the code. Import React from React. And then by this to-dos, we need to define what piece of data we want. Okay, first I'll import it. Import the to-dos. Great, it should work. No, use priority is not defined. Sure, no problem. Here, for the to-dos, we see that in the app query here, it's a piece of data that is on the user, right? So we need to pick out this piece of data, the dependency, and move it to the to-dos. We don't need to use preload query anymore. We define the data. We use Fragment, a GraphQL. It says Fragment. It should be Fragment. We give it a name, Fragment to-dos. It's on the user, so to-dos user on user. Use Fragment. Am I right about this? Something wrong here actually. Ooh, typo. Okay, this looks nice. To-dos user. Okay, to-dos user. This looks nice. Okay, so we define this piece of with this piece of fragment, and then the ref is app query ref no more, right? It should be what? It's on user, so it's user, and this user should be because this fragment is on this user, so it must be supporting to this user.ref. We need to import it from here. Should be generated relay user.graphql.js, I guess, and we need to update the yarn relay. Great, you can see that we defined this user fragment and we generated to-dos user graph, this fragment, right? And then we can import it and get the ref. So it means for to-dos now, it means we needed this kind of a fragment. You please pass me something supporting this to-dos user ref, right? Okay, now we're passing down the user. So here we need to, in the query, we need to include this fragment, right? So rather than define the raw fields, we define a fragment. So it's specifically for this component to consume this fragment. So query user. This is a fragment. So okay. So now here we don't pass down the app query ref anymore. We actually need to pass down the user. To get the user, we need to use preload query here, and data and it should be data.user. I think so. But now, if we use a preloaded query here, the app may suspend. So I'll need to move the suspense to the app here. Reload. Let's see. Oh, some error here. App query. Oh, we need to update the query by relay. Still some error. Cannot read property user of now. Wait a minute. App query is not now. It's not now. Data. What says to-dos? Oh, yeah. Okay, data is on user. So okay, the data is user now. So there's to-dos. Now, wait a minute. Allow me to log the data. Now, interesting. Use here console log and data. Data user is a user. This is the default data, and then we actually has this fragment to-dos the user. So this user should be right. Data user to-dos user. Ah, shit. This is the fragment, but we need to pass down the reference. I'm sorry. Yeah, this should be right. And then they say user is not defined. Huh? Oh shit, this is types. Sorry. It should be props.user. I'm not very familiar with the flow. Ooh, still error. To-do is not defined. Ah, God. Okay. Let's define the to-do as well. We copy the code from to-do and export function to-do. We need to do the same. For to-dos, it actually consumes no data, right? You just pass all the data to to-do, the to-do component. We first import to-do from to-do. And then this piece of fragment, we need to put it into the to-do here. So we data use fragment. Okay, we need to import React as well. Use fragment. GraphQL. Am I getting the right GraphQL? Yeah, it's right. GraphQL, it says fragment. So for this to-do component, we need a piece of data on the to-do, right? So to-do on to-do. On to-do. This to-do is a type in a schema. Okay, to-do. Great. Yes, it's on user to-do. Great. And then yeah, on to-do, then yeah, it's ID. It's just the title is complete, right? And then we get we pass down the to-do as well. This is the props. This to-do should be yeah, we call the relay first. Okay, we get to-do ref, and we import type. Oh, don't turn out. Generated relay to-do GraphQL. Yeah. So we get the reference. We use the fragment. Now data is now the to-do itself. So I think this is to-do. Okay, good. And then here we could just use the fragment, right? By using these three dots to say it's to do. Yeah, that's pretty much of it. And let's see if there's something we need to be done. Apps, the query updated, to-dos, to-do. I think that's it. Nothing more. We update the relay and see what is happening. Oh yeah, you see, that's just working. But it says each child in the list should have a unique key props. You know, to-dos, even though we don't use the to-do itself, but we need the key, right? The key is to-do ID, but the to-do ID is in this fragment. But hey, don't worry about it. Relay actually allows you to define duplicate fields, but you don't need to worry about the performance stuff. So for these to-dos, I'll just extract the IDs here and see if there's warning is gone. To-do ID, yeah. Definition of to-dos user appear to have changed. Okay, I need to yarn relay. Great. Oh, this is some error warning about the checkbox. We will try to fix them in the following videos. Okay, so that's what we want to do today. Let's recap what is going on here. Okay, before we go to the whole general picture, let's just address the concern here. We define ID here, but in to do, you see, we define ID again. In the relay and GraphQL, actually only one ID is from the server. So if we have logged the data, let's see. If we log the data here, we will see that the data is not raw data at this phase. Okay, it's user. This ID status defined is not in the fragment, so it's already parsed into the raw data, but into a JSON data. But here, the rest of it are in the fragment. So we can see that it's fragments. There's no JSON data here. Again, if we log the data in the to-do list data, we would see the ID, but all the other things it should be in the fragment. To-dos, to-dos. Yeah, ID is here, but fragments is in other places. But ID actually internally is only one ID. You can recognize the fragment in the query. Here it's like a getter function, I guess. So that's it. Now, if we look at the whole application from top to bottom, you would realize that we only define the app query. Say okay. Directly, we need the ID status, but for the other to-dos, we put them in the fragment. But I don't know what it is, right? For the to-dos user to app component, it's actually opaque, right? It just only know that there is a data dependency here, but it doesn't know what details are. The details are defined in each component it needed, right? To-do, this is the data to-do wants, so to-do defines a fragment. This is what the to-dos want. So to-dos define the fragment, and the to-do list, it actually doesn't know the details of each to-do item, so you just use this fragment from to-do, right? And this to-do fragment is included in the final query in the app query. And to this app query, it just loads the data, and hey, this is the data you want me to do, but I don't want me to fetch. But I don't know what exactly they are, but just to pick as you want. I've already offered all the data you want, okay? And so here we load the query, and app get it, and app will use this data and pass down the data to the to-dos. And actually, I think we could rewrite the header the same as the to-dos. Let's do it. Header. This is the header, export, const header. Okay, it should be It just needs the ID, right? So let's define a fragment. Const data use fragment. This one. Use fragment, GraphQL, fragment. This one is header. This header is on what? This header is on the user. Great. So fragment header user on user. We want just one ID. So this is it. And then we run relay. It will give us the header user GraphQL, the type. So we want, this is the user, so we get the user, which should be the header user ref. And then this is the props, used it. And this is the props user and data. This is user, so there's no ID stuff. Okay, so we, let's import the type here. Import, I don't like flow. Again, once I would say anytimes you want, but I don't like it. Header user GraphQL. And then in the header, app query, ID status. Status actually is not used anymore. Let's remove it. And then it should be header user. And then, so the data is actually, oh yeah, we need it. So the data here, again, we need to pass down the data user. Great, let's rerun yarn the relay and see what happens. Loading. Oh, I forgot to import the header. Shit. Okay, here is header. Loading. Some error. Use fragment is not defined. Oh, come on. React is not defined. Shit. Great. Now we can see that, yeah, it's working. And once again, we define a component dependency by using JSx, right? Just import and render them. And also, we would define the data dependencies for each component. Usually, we just need fragment or a piece of fragment of a specific data type. So we define a fragment, and then in the parents or the ancestor components like apps here, we need to group these fragments together and fetch the data all together. Even though we explicitly define the fragments, add the fragments here, but they are actually, I would say they are decoupled because the data each fragment wants is opaque to this app query. Even though like these two fragments might have duplicates for app query, it doesn't matter. It will just get the whole data and then say, hey, just to pick the data you want, I've already get the data all for you. So this is it. So this is what the fragment does. It's super powerful, but honestly, I need more time to get used to it, and it's not that straightforward, right? Yeah, but how should I say? Actually, this is the same as if we just define if we don't use relay or we don't use GraphQL, we just need to fetch all the data to this root component. Even though we use the REST API, it's okay. We fetch all the data and pass down the data to the child component as they need it, right? It's super cool and it's okay, but there is a problem that it's all the components are coupled, right? If you want to say add some data dependencies to a child component, you would change the field in its parent, right? And if the parent just accidentally removes some data because some other components no longer needs the data anymore, and like say there are duplicates between these dependencies, there might be is prone to some errors. It's difficult to control, right? Yeah, so that's how Relay solved this problem. It actually doesn't solve this problem because in the runtime, it's the same, actually works for the same. But for the source code stuff, before the build, we actually defined the dependencies each within our component, right? So yeah, so that's why the Relay needs a compiler, needs a step to merge those fragment dependencies into this root query. So that's it. That's all for episode 3. Hope it helps. The fragment is super important in Relay, and yeah, in the following videos, we might just jump into the mutation stuff. So how can we, yeah, check and uncheck the to-do, add a new to-do? Yeah, that's something also very interesting. And stay tuned. Bye bye.